And get this meeting started. We've got a packed agenda tonight. And so I want to welcome everyone that's here and thank you all for joining us. I'd like to ask Courtney Moser to call the roll for us, please. Here. Here. Here.
Oh, he's on via Zoom.
He's on virtually.
They can't
I'm
hear.
Here.
They can't hear because you don't
Yes,
have a
I'm
mic.
Here.
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 Okay. And we have as a guest here tonight, Ken Falk of the Indiana ACLU. So welcome, Mr. Falk.
If I can, I just wanted to briefly note that Judge Fawcett sends her regrets. We've been alternating and she was unable to be here tonight due to illness. So I'm stepping in for her tonight.
Okay, Counselor Iverson, you were going to read the guiding principles?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Githens. And I want to start by
You're
wishing
not,
everyone.
we can't hear you.
Oh my gosh. Can you hear me now?
No.
I can hear you, Peter, on Zoom.
Okay, so.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take your place. Okay, yeah. Recognizing our commitment to public safety, we will work collaboratively and transparently to 1, prioritize treatment over incarceration when appropriate. 2, build a justice facility that meets constitutional standards and treats inmates with dignity. 3, address inequities in race, economic status, disability, national origin, sexual orientation, and gender. And 4, reduce the number of people entering the criminal justice system and reduce recidivism for those who are or were in the system. I'd like to note we've been asked about what we're doing to move forward on things. And so we have set up, and it's on your agenda, a tentative plan for upcoming meetings. On March the 6th, we want to create a plan for the subcommittees, and the commissioners will discuss our vision for what we'd like to see. On March 30th, a discussion of the facilities that various ones of us have visited, including judges, and I know Attorney Wilson was there on one of the visits with us. And April 3rd, a presentation by the RFQ committee on what we are looking at in terms of a group to hire. Before we begin with public comment, I have something that I'd like to share with people here.
Oh, and Commissioner Githens, when you're done, I do have on the agenda item we just covered 2 proposed agenda items for upcoming meetings. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, if we could do that later.
After your statement. Happy to do it after your statement. Thank you.
Okay, it has been disheartening to hear the sheriff and others claim that the Monroe County Commissioners have not been supportive of the sheriff. So I want to take a moment to share some things with you. As county councilors, Crosley, Iverson, and Wiltz can tell you, each year the sheriff and all the other elected officials and department heads go before the county council with their budget requests for the following year. If during a given year that budget is insufficient, the elected official or department head can make a request to the county council for additional funds. The commissioners have no authority over the county's budget. The sheriff has reported purchasing furniture from Habitat for Humanity's Restore and other places. The sheriff's office has also been the recipient of used furniture from Cook. To my knowledge, the sheriff did not ask the county council for funding for additional furniture. I know certainly that he did not ask the county commissioners. We were not told of his desire for new furniture and certainly did not stand in his way of getting it. According to state statute, it is the responsibility of the sheriff to maintain the cleanliness of the jail. That includes the floors, the walls, the ceilings, the sinks, the showers, toilets, bedding, inmate clothing, kitchen, offices, and medical areas. The sheriff is also responsible for programming, medical care, mental health care, assigning inmates to particular cells and space, maintaining a clean space, paint, food service, jail staffing, and training for officers. Our colleagues on the county council are responsible for funding for staff training, materials, equipment, and supplies to maintain the cleanliness of the facility, in this case, paint, floor cleaner, and whatnot. It is the responsibility of the county commissioners to maintain the physical structure of the building, including the roof and the various electrical, mechanical, HVAC, and plumbing components of the jail. Of the items the sheriff indicated needed to be addressed at the CGRC meeting 4 weeks ago, the green slime on the wall was determined to be Perel shampoo, something that needed, of course, to be cleaned off of the wall. The toilet in the trustees area was out of commission for 3 days and had been repaired before the sheriff made his presentation, or so I was told. A method has been developed to allow the window grills to be cut open so that the area behind the grills can be cleaned, and that work will begin shortly. The base around some of the shower stalls have been repaired. The requested sally port changes have been made. A temporary shield has been put into place to divert water away from the electrical box in the laundry area. The vent fans are being inventoried to identify which ones need to be repaired or replaced. Contracts have been signed to replace the aging drain in the laundry area and to remove solar panels from the roof in preparation to have the roof repaired later this spring. And leaking pipes have been repaired and or rewrapped. We are also looking at different placement of the clocks in the day rooms so that they are less likely to be damaged. And the water pitcher we saw outside of a cell, the water was in fact clean and drinkable, but the need to put a water pitcher outside a cell often happens because the inmate has done something which caused the jailers to turn off the water. This generally is not due to a failure to properly maintain the building. We are addressing the problems that A, we have been told about, and B, that we are responsible for. And as you are probably all aware, maintenance in the jail, especially in a jail as old as ours, is ongoing. In addition to giving the sheriff used furniture, we want to thank Cook Medical for donating a floor buffer, and we want to individually thank Mr. Pete Yonkman for his offer to pay for half of the cost of the paint to repaint the interior of the jail. We are sincerely glad that the sheriff is working to make this aging facility cleaner and less stark for those who work there or who are incarcerated. And we thank Sheriff Marte for saying on WFHB last Thursday that we do need a new jail. So, Attorney Wilson, what was it that you wanted to add to?
And I'm sorry, since that item wasn't on the agenda, I wasn't sure if we were opening up that to discussion for the rest of the committee before I made my request.
Usually the request would have gone in last week. I'm sorry that things, if you could contact Peter Iverson and me in advance, we will do that. It's like every other agenda that the county does.
I wasn't sure if any member of the community had anything before I moved on. I just wanted to make sure I was giving space before I requested my agenda. So if anyone has anything, I don't want to step over.
I'd like to say a few words, if I can. Good.
Well, we will be starting public comment precisely at 4:40 today.
So you want me to wait to 4:40?
No, I said public comment will start at 4:40.
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to respond to everything that was just said here. But I could tell you that a lot of the things were said is not correct. And if it's misunderstood, the whole committee is welcome to come to the jail and look for themselves. As far as the donation from Cook Group, I know I didn't come to the commissioners for furniture. What I came to the commissioners was for equipment to clean and sanitize the jail, because I know what's going to happen down the road if I don't do that quickly. That's what I did come to you for. And I also stated that I had to go to another county that I was embarrassed to do to borrow their cleaning equipment. So when I hear the word aesthetic, there's nothing aesthetic about that. And if you think it is, I'll welcome you to come to the jail again, and I will personally myself walk you through what the living conditions are in that place right now. To finish off, all I want is someone, commissioners, to support me in the lengthy job that we have to do together. I just got here. The commissioner's been here for some time.
And
as I said
earlier,
I did not interrupt you.
As I said earlier, you need to go to council for those requests.
I did not interrupt you.
Yeah.
I did not interrupt you.
I can't agree with the commissioners getting to say something and him not getting to respond.
Okay,
I
4 weeks ago, he got to say a lot.
I sat here very calmly and listened to certain things that was not 100% factual. Now, I'll repeat it again. I did ask for equipment to clean and sanitize that place, period. That's all I asked for. The Sally Port, someone made a statement that it was scratches to the van and no one knew. That's no fault of mine. I made you aware of it. It was a safety issue. If that van would hit a human being and pin them there, they will get hurt, tremendously hurt. You yourself came. I didn't know you was coming, but you came and you saw the van in there. We have damages to the van. If you want to see it, if you don't believe me, they're there. They were there consistently with that wall. So everything that I've come to you for the expanding of that Sally Port, it's not aesthetics. I know we're building a new jail. I get it. But when you tell me that I'm moving too fast when it comes to officer safety and the safety of the people there, well, yes, I'm going to move fast. And right now we're in a situation that is not clean and it's not sanitized to the degree it should be. That didn't happen on the mountain. I just got here. So when I come to you for assistance, that's the urgency that I come to. I do not want this back and forward. What I want to do is work hand in hand. And I don't have that much equipment that you could provide. Again, cleaning equipment. Yes, I did ask for that. As far as the furniture, I've never been searching of that at all. Now, I did state that I did go to Restore and had to buy some chairs for the workers. That was urgent. I didn't have the time or the luxury to come and ask you for that. I wanted to get it done, period, because I needed to move fast. So yes, if you doubt what I'm saying, all of you are more than welcome to come down and I will show you personally what I'm referring to, because there's more things to get done right now that I don't think you're aware of. And I like for you to be aware of it so you can understand where I'm coming from. But you cannot understand where I'm coming from if you don't come and see for yourselves.
I have not used the word aesthetics.
You did not. But
I have
did.
not. And I also have not said that you were moving too fast.
But you know who did.
In the
I
spirit
did
of
not.
Black History Month, and channeling another Black female, Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high.
So
And in addition to that, there's so many things, and I felt like Tag got me in because I felt like I was also a part of that. So I'm assuming that you were mentioning me as well. First and foremost, that airing of Bring It On was last Monday, not Thursday. So let's, for the record, but that's minute. At the end of the day, we could sit here and play blame game of who did what, who said what, who didn't say what, who said what. We still have people there that needs to and things that need to be addressed. And Sheriff Marte and I just had a rather robust conversation this afternoon of what is responsibility, since we all have our lanes and we all know which lanes we're supposed to be in. So as the county council lane, we decided that of what we need to do. So we have talked and we will go accordingly and appropriately to make sure that folks are getting what they need, how they need it, when they need it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. There's no need that I need to go low and respond to things, because I think for the sake of this business, we need to move forward and hear the presentation and get to public comment.
well, we've now had 4 minutes of public comment time used. So
I think that's just,
Well, that's it.
Not
It wasn't
okay.
on the agenda, so
yeah,
we're being fair.
absolutely.
I do have a proposal for 2 agenda items. Would you like me to do that at the end of Mr. Falk's presentation, or just briefly mention them now so we can get that on proposed agendas moving forward?
if you could do that later, I would really appreciate it. Thank
After
you.
Mr. Falk's presentation, I'm happy to do that. I appreciate you being here.
Okay, thank you. For public comment, first one, and this is done in terms of priority, in terms of people who've spoken most recently. We first have Ashley Pirani. Ms. Pirani, please come up to the mic, join us. And we need Judge Stafford, would you make sure that mic's turned on so that everyone can hear? I appreciate that.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Ashley Pirani, Monroe County resident. I'll be brief. I have 2 questions and 1 request. When will the commissioners be providing the committee and the public the review report on the visit to Maricopa County? It was presented as a necessary trip, and we've yet to hear about that. Additionally, I have the same question for the quote unquote roadmap that's been talked about here that the commissioners have. When will that be made available? Finally, I'd like to request that time be specifically set aside in the agenda for the commissioners to provide an update on how they are providing support to help improve the living conditions inside the jail. As a tax-paying citizen, I would find it very helpful to ensure that our incarcerated community members are being cared for in a humane way, and that we work towards restoring integrity. It sounds like some of this may be being addressed soon, and I appreciate that, but I would still like to have some clarity. I do appreciate today's update somewhat. And going forward, it would be great to stop finger pointing and deflecting and instead look towards cohesive solutions together. This back and forth about who's responsible for what is less important to me than how we're going to ensure our incarcerated community is being cared for in humane ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pirani. I'll remind people that there's a time limit of 3 minutes and the clock is showing up on the screen at this point. Ms. Moser, is there anyone on Zoom that wants us to speak? We'll go back and forth. Okay, can TSD, can you allow ST Bolton, is it, to speak?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hi, my name is Sam Holdeman. I would like to take a moment to amplify the voices of the service providers who responded to the health department survey presented very briefly last meeting. These valuable perspectives were not given much time, and I would like for this committee to give greater consideration to the perspectives of the people who know most about mental health and substance use in our county. The following are quotes from the health department's report. Quote, "We are very opposed to a new jail complex, given its stigmatizing and punitive view of those with substance use and mental health disorders. Jail is not treatment," end quote. Quote, "Abolish drug screening fees, which contribute to debt, distress, and the extension of probation length. Recognize that some people have to choose between paying these fees and eating or paying rent," end quote. Quote, "Supportive/critical services such as treatment, physical/mental health care, etc., should be provided by individuals in their communities, not inside incarceration," end quote. Quote, "I fear that our local government is beginning to combine the criminal legal system with the healthcare system and the recovery system, etc. There are many local organizations that have found great success in supporting individuals in their recovery with finding stable housing, etc. These tasks shouldn't become the responsibility of the criminal legal system. Additionally, individuals shouldn't be incarcerated away from their families, employment, etc., for a longer period of time because of an in-jail substance abuse program. Recovery and treatment programs should be kept separate from the criminal legal system," end quote. Quote, "We should not expect the jail to function as a mental health or social service facility. That responsibility requires specialized skills, resources, and ongoing non-compulsory access to treatment," end quote. Quote, "Do not expand the jail," end quote. Quote, "I do not want a new jail, increased access to reentry services prior to exit, increased access to housing/sober living upon exit," end quote. Quote, "Invest less in these types of facilities and invest more in prevention," end quote. Based on this evidence, one major theme and at least two immediate action steps emerge. First of all, do not embed mental health services within the criminal legal system. These two are antithetical. Secondly, as far as action steps go, eliminate drug screening fees and either reinstate the health department to this commission or otherwise include the perspectives of mental health service providers. Given that substance use and mental health are in fact health issues and not legal issues, why are there so many judges and lawyers here and so few therapists, or rather no therapists at all? It's widely acknowledged that substance use and mental health are the major drivers of incarceration. In fact, quote unquote, overcrowding in the jail is the direct product of the criminalization of mental health and substance use, and yet no one at this table is an expert in mental health or substance use. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be Audrey Williams. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Williams, and I'm a resident of Monroe County. I was quite astonished to hear that the county commissioners went to visit Maricopa County. The first time I heard that, I actually thought I had misheard you. Surely our county commissioners did not go visit a county that had become synonymous with the mistreatment of prisoners and jailed individuals for ideas to implement in Monroe County's new jail. The only place worse I could think of our county commissioners going to visit would be Rikers Island. Additionally, Maricopa County is one of the largest counties in the country, and the sheriff's office has an operating budget of $433.8 million. I cannot imagine a less representative location for the county commissioners to visit, and I wonder what they were actually doing there, because visiting the jail could not have possibly been the motivating factor for that trip. Additionally, this trip cost taxpayers $5,286.53. This is money that could have been spent improving current conditions in the county jail. Sheriff Marte has given an almost impossible task cleaning up and improving conditions at the jail with no support. You should be ashamed. You go on vacation and are excited to have a slideshow about fun toys you want to include in a prison that will be built 5 years from now. And while you waive the ACLU report as evidence for why the current jail building cannot be renovated, you seem to show no interest in giving resources to improving current conditions at the jail or for additional programs to divert individuals from entering the jail. We can't ignore inhumane conditions for the next 5 years just because there will eventually be a new jail. I would ask the county commissioners to stop planning vacations and stop bragging about these and looking at shiny new toys that we may never be able to afford. Instead, I ask that you actually start listening to this committee. Time and time again, people have sat on this committee and made the same recommendations and requests that you dismiss out of hand, such as the jail should be within city limits and close to resources already established within town. Basic information should be provided to these committee members just so they can do their job, like how much of space is expected to be needed for offices, just so they can look at potential land that they could have for jail site recommendations. Even simple things such as agendas. I find it ironic that you suggest that agenda items should be mentioned a week in advance when this agenda wasn't actually available last week. The commissioners seem to be ignoring the fact that this is in fact the Community Justice Response Committee. You are ignoring the community, the justice, the response, and even this committee seated here. The public has watched members of this committee almost beg to help meet more frequently or even just have basic information about what is going on in their meetings. Your disregard of everything that this committee is supposed to be standing for is appalling. And I again say that you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else virtually? I'm sorry. Okay. Can you please allow Natalia Galvin to be heard, please? Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hello, my name is Natalia Galvin, and I am a resident of Monroe County. I will keep my comments brief. There is a privilege of serving on the CJRC committee. Everyone who has a seat at this table has a voice in this discussion. When you are not using that voice.
Sorry, they didn't start the clock. Sorry, it started now. I apologize.
Do you want me to start again?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. When you are not using that voice, you are doing a disservice to the community. These comments are directed to some of the county council members on this committee. Our county council is a co-equal branch with the Monroe County Commissioners. If you are leaving the burden on one of the county council members to make a bulk of the criticism that is well-deserved, you are doing a community a disservice. It is not fair for one county council member to be the only one pushing back. We elected you to be a co-equal branch of government. You asked for us to elect you to serve. You are the only check on the commissioner's branch of government, and we need you to act like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galvin. We have time for a couple of more people. Nathan Rosenblum. We can't hear you. It can't be recorded. It has to be. It won't carry over Zoom without the microphone. Okay, thank you. T. Randall.
Hi, I'm T. I'm a member of Carrot Cages and a resident of the county. I would like to emphasize that the current jail will be at minimum in use for another 5 years. And the county has still yet to produce a report estimating the costs of repair and renovation of the jail. The Ken Ray study estimates that cost could be as low as $22,122,000 or as high as $56,484,000. That is a $34 million range. And I believe that the county's choice to not go ahead and produce this report or to go ahead and properly repair the jail without having any real knowledge of the actual cost is a failure.
Thank you. Councilmember Hawk. Please go ahead. Has Councilmember Hawk been promoted? Okay, she's taking her hand down.
You can hear me now? Thank you. I arrived about 5 minutes late because I was watching what's going on at the state. I wanted to bring forward, if it hasn't already been mentioned, that the Personnel Committee did meet with the Sheriff's Office, and we tried to move it forward and on a fast track to get that position in place so that he could have the help he needed to take care of some of the cleanliness and so forth of the jail. It appears that there's some disagreement on what does maintenance mean. Certainly, we've had enough time to figure out what maintenance means. So I just would appreciate very much that when people of like minds who want to get this moving forward and get that jail cleaned up and give the sheriff the equipment and staff that he needs to get that done, that we get that done. I believe the county council supports that, but we have to move forward with that job description. So please do that as soon as possible, like yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hawk. Pamela Davidson.
I'm Pamela Davidson, and I'm a proud county resident. I'm so delighted the sheriff is addressing the inhumanity of the jail conditions so quickly. I'm very appreciative that you've been so honest and forthcoming about that. It prompted me to go back and look at the jail study we did and paid good money for in 2021. The same time this committee was formed 2 years and 8 months ago. We don't have even a site list. Horrifying. Here's 3 things. I'm thinking about the fact that most of the people in the jail have not been convicted of a crime. So we have too many people going to the jail. Here's what the study said in 2021. People staying in jail are staying considerably longer while the jail population is up. Number 2, they said our court criminal case processes are significantly slower than the national average and inefficient. Too many continuances. They talked about that. And number 3, the number of criminal case continuances for felony and misdemeanor cases is extensive. So we're arresting too many people and keeping them far too long for a variety of things. I want to know what the Board of Judges has done about this, because I've heard nothing on these remedial steps to have fewer people in the jail. Now, everyone has talked about mental and substance abuse treatment. We're all in. But there are a lot of nuisance cases going through there. And if we don't think diversion cost us, we're crazy. I went by the probation department one night, 9 vehicles parked outside. I didn't know we had a wave of terror in this town. I'm thinking 9 vehicles that I saw parked there. That's outrageous. I can't believe it. So diversion costs people. And I hope you were all struck, as I was last week. We were talking about the Stride Center. What's the goal? Keep people out of the jail system. I was struck by the incongruity of the fact that we're arresting pot smokers, putting them in jail, putting them through the system, and trying to let other people out of the system. That is crazy nuts. Those are nuisance crimes. We read in the report that the prosecutor says, I'm not making a blanket exception, but we know from January 6th, prosecutors have a lot of discretion, don't have to make general statements about practice. We know that. So I say we're arresting far too many people. We're keeping them far too long. And everyone here has talked about the abhorrent conditions, which you're going to tell us all about. But it's 3 to 5 years. It's 5 years before we have a new jail. So reduce the volume, use quality over quantity, and address what this jail report said in terms of reducing the flow and the overcrowding in the immediate term. We've got to address this. We paid for the study. Let's use it. Board of Judges, make it happen. You're the lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodman. I'm sorry. Ms. Davidson, I know you quite well. I apologize. It's 5 o'clock and we have some out-of-town guest. I would like to go ahead and have Mr. Falk give his report at this point. And so would you begin, sir? And please make sure your microphone is turned on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ken Falk. I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Indiana, and I'm the attorney who in 2008 brought the lawsuit, which is still there, concerning the Monroe County Jail. I told my younger son, who's a bit of a wise guy, he got that from his mom, that I was coming down here today to sort of be the hovering heavy presence. And he said, have they met you? And I said, thank you. Look, you need a new jail. Everyone knows that. Back in 2008, when I filed the lawsuit, everyone knew that. The jail then was grossly overcrowded. It is not now, thanks to the work of the judges and everyone else in the system. But it is, as the report that you guys commissioned that was just referred to, it is, the report noted, is evident that the Monroe County Jail has exceeded its structural and functional life cycle. It is, if you contrast the jail, and I did watch the presentation that the sheriff's office put on at your meeting in January, and I saw the pictures, but forget the pictures, forget everything. Just look at architecture. I'm a lawyer. I've been involved, I was just writing them down, at least 10 cases involving county jails. I'm not an architect, but I can tell you what happened between the time this jail was built, and I think this jail was in bad shape the minute it was built because of being on top of the courthouse. But the time this jail was built and jails now, and those of you who've gone to other jails have undoubtedly seen this, jails are now being built in a system where you have basically pods. You will have everything on one floor. You will have a central control area. You will have radiating out like slices of the pie living quarters. That gives the ability of the staff in that control area or even in the units themselves to have eye-to-eye contact on prisoners. The problems with old jails, even jails that are not silly, which I think putting a jail on top of an existing building was silly. The problem is they were linear. And when you have a linear jail, you can't see what you can't see. And even if there is adequate cameras around, and historically Monroe County has had problems with that because of the age, every prisoner will tell you, if you ask them and they're honest with you, within 2 minutes where the spots are where there's no camera. That's where people go to fight. That's where people go to do things. And unless you have a human being in every cell, which obviously you don't, you're going to have problems. And it's a dangerous, dangerous situation. We had the case in 2008. It's a class action, meaning that I represent all the prisoners in the jail then and now. We employed Ed Cohn to be our expert. Ed was a great guy. He was the former commissioner of the DOC. Not exactly a big ACLU guy, but a straight shooter. He went through the jail. I'll always remember this. And at one point, Ed was taller than I am. He just reached up and grabbed stuff off the ceiling. He touched insulation on the pipes. You can't have that in a jail. You can't have wires exposed. You can't have dripping water. You can't have that. And what Ed said in his report to the court or to me was that construction of a new jail is necessary. So we filed this private settlement agreement in 2009, and it's called a private settlement agreement because it's not a court order, it's not confidential. And it required a population cap and required notice to be given when we approached the cap. And to this day, I receive daily population reports. And as I said, the population's down. But the expectation of everyone back in 2009 was there would be a new jail. So we agreed that the private settlement agreement would expire in 2011, subject to being re-upped. And every year we've re-upped it so that now it's set to expire January 15th of 2024. The idea being that at least having it there will keep a lid on. But when I get involved in jail cases, and I've represented thousands of prisoners, I've represented cases involving mentally ill prisoners. I'm very sensitive to issues concerning prisoners. By the time I get involved, everyone knows what the right answer is, and which is usually why we steer to an agreement. At the current time, because of lawsuits we filed, there are new jails being built in Vigo, in Henry, in Gibson, in Wabash, and Fort Willing and Allen. We've had a little issue getting things done there. I'm not a big fan of locking people up. I'm the ACLU, remember? But I recognize that people will be locked up. And if they are locked up, especially since they're pretrial, therefore the presumption of innocence, they should be placed in constitutional settings. And this is not just an issue for the prisoners. I always say, and I don't know if anyone believes me, the people I feel sorriest for working in bad jails are the staff. The prisoners eventually leave. The staff has to come to work. And you'll see, because of jails, and I don't know what the answer is in Monroe County, but you will see in jails, the turnover rate of staff is incredible, especially now when things are competitive, because who wants to work in a horrible jail? Who wants to come every day and smell the way the Monroe County Jail may smell, or deal with prisoners whose unhappiness about being incarcerated is egged on by their living conditions? As I said, I'm not an architect. I cannot tell you what to build. I can tell you that, as I said, the modern approach is to build these pods. And the advantage of that is if you have land, you don't have to build all of your pods. You can leave it empty. And then when time comes, you can build a new pod. That's what they did up in a case in Elkhart where I was involved in. What they did is they built their kitchen and their medical setting for an enormous staff, an enormous amount of prisoners. But they don't have beds for those prisoners because they haven't built out, because they don't need to. There's a lot of ways to do this, but I think you've been given all the advice you need. And it's, for what it's worth, it's frustrating to me, I don't know if any of you care, to see all you good people wanting to do the right thing, but sort of being paralyzed because you want it to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. Marion County was concerned when they built their jail about the mentally ill and about substance abuse. So they built a campus, and they have a separate building there designed for short-term, for homeless, from people with mental health problems. You can divert them right away. The problem is given our general lack of community care for the mentally ill and substance abuse, is that those people frequently come to the attention of law enforcement because they do things. And once they do something, you have to do something. And there's a very humane way of dealing with that. I don't buy the notion that merely because you are being sent to a criminal justice campus that somehow that's a badge of infamy. If you can get treatment there, fine. And the fact that this is such a caring community, and it really is. I mean, you guys are, this is, there's Monroe County and there's the rest of Indiana. You guys are desperately wanting to do the right thing and treat people well, but it has hindered your ability to solve this problem. And there's a very basic solution, which is you have to build a new jail. This jail, under the best of circumstances, it's way past its time. And why do we care about that? Well, number one, it's a lousy place to work. It's a lousy place to be incarcerated. And you guys are going to get sued, not by me. I'm not threatening. I don't generally file damages cases. But you have this report from 2 years ago now, as the speaker said, which points out all the deficiencies in the jail. And something bad's going to happen. At that point, you can't say whoever's being sued, the county, we didn't know, because you know. And constitutional violations require fault, require knowledge. Well, you all have knowledge. And that's a real concern that something bad will happen. It's always a concern when you don't have sightlines. It's always a concern when you have a dilapidated jail. I understand the problem was taken care of, but it was somewhat disheartening seeing water dripping through a live electrical box is. You could go on and on, but this report that you commissioned, which I have and I read, it's very long, does that for you. It's time. You can incorporate your concerns about being a caring community, about those who might be able to be diverted. The judges are obviously very conscious of that because the population has been down, although it's always above what this jail was built for. Remember, when this jail was built, its capacity was 123. It's gotten to its current capacity by double bunking, which has its own problems. But it really is time. I have toyed with the idea of letting the private settlement agreement expire and seeing if a new lawsuit should be filed. I think that's silly. We're all on the same page here. Well, not all of us on the same page, same book, different pages. But the time has come. And you knew it, not you here, people. The Monroe County knew it in 2008 when we filed the case. No one was surprised. No one said, oh my gosh, this is the best jail in the world. Everyone said, what took you so long? Now, the sheriff, of course, and all you other people are absolutely right. If you guys decide today to build a new jail, 3 years minimum, maybe, depending on what sort of setup. Henry County did something interesting, which is a lot of these jails they do prefab now. Another county in Indiana did that I was not involved with, and they just you put the cement down, you get your lines, and you just plop them into place much faster and cheaper. I don't know if that would work here, but it's going to take a while. And one of the things we struggle with, and I'm dealing with this in Allen County, where the judge did find that the conditions were unconstitutional, did issue injunctions, is what to do in the interim. And what we try and do in the interim is what we did in the private settlement agreement, which is keep the population down, try and make sure people get recreation, try and make sure that things are done the best way possible. But you guys are really living on the edge here, because this jail is really, really past, not even its prime, it's past its effective life. And that is a danger to those who live, who work, and who are incarcerated there. And I don't have much more to say. I know I should be saying you shouldn't put anyone in jail because I'm from the ACLU, but that's not how it works. And I don't think any community would think that everyone has to be de-incarcerated. There are some people who are going to be incarcerated. There's some people we process through quickly, but everyone is entitled to protections of the Constitution. And that's what I do. I represent people whose constitutional rights are violated, and you have a jail which I think is problematic, and it needs to be replaced. So I thank you for this. I don't know if I was a sufficient hovering presence. The report, have my younger son watch this and he can tell me, but that's where we are. And I understand that everyone here has a different role to play. And I understand here that I know dealing with councils and commissioners and sheriffs that everyone has different perspectives. But I hear you all saying the same thing, which is that the solution to this problem is not investing money in something that is not worth investing money in the current jail, but in finding a new solution. And unlike many counties, I've been told that you have some money available. You've had land. I know there's been some dispute about whether to be in the city limits or out of the city limits. Obviously, I have nothing to say about that other than to say that in thinking about that, think about the type of jail you're going to want to see. You don't want jails should not have floors. Jails should not have elevators. Jails should be on one level, if at all possible. Marion County Jail, obviously not, because of its size. Allen County Jail will not. Vigo is. I think you guys toured Vigo. It's a lovely jail, as jails go. And then that may require you to be in an area outside Bloomington. I don't know how that works, but do not feel that you have to be within city limits and sacrifice that ease of maintaining discipline and also protecting the prisoners. You know, the Vanderbilt County Jail, which I mentioned, and as I said, they built it too small because the council and the commissioners fought each other every step of the way. I'm not from Indiana, so when I moved out here, I was dealing with different bodies within towns and counties, so it's been interesting. But that jail was fantastic in that, at least for those people there, when it was opened up, they had a lot of freedom, but they were under constant supervision. And the staffing was not as demanding as in the linear jail because of sightlines. So thank you. I'll take any comments or questions, but that's where we are. So where we are now is we still have the private settlement agreement. It still requires certain things regarding population. As I said, population has been down, which is great, because obviously population exacerbates everything. But keeping the population down is not a panacea. Keeping the population down does not convert the current facility to a constitutional facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilwoman Crossley.
So thank you. I have lots of questions, but I'll keep mine brief. I guess two-part is, I know you just mentioned that it kept getting extended year after year.
Yep.
And I guess my question is how, it's frustrating that folks that were empowered during that time didn't do what was necessary. And now all of a sudden we're here. But maybe everything happens for a reason. So that's why we're here. But I guess I was just curious to see like why it got extended.
Sure.
And then the other part to that is I've heard from various sources, but since you are the expert and you are sitting here in front of us, there's lots of rumor mills of what will happen if this expires next year and we've not done anything. I guess, can you talk to those points?
Sure. Well, this is going to get boring, but I'm a lawyer, right? There's something called the Prison Litigation Reform Act. Back in 1996, Congress passed a law to try and stop prison litigation. And what Congress said basically is that in the old days, if we had a jail case, and frequently we had these cases and we'd come in and the sheriff would say, what took you so long? And everyone would sort of say, we want to build a new jail. We just don't want to be blamed for it. So we'd like to blame you in the court. You would just enter into a court agreement and the court would sign it and they build a new jail. Prison Litigation Reform Act says you can't do that. A judge cannot sign off on an order unless he or she makes a finding of ongoing constitutional violations. Well, no lawyer is going to let their client, the county or the sheriff or the commissioners, what have you, agree there are ongoing constitutional violations. So the PLRA, Prison Litigation Reform Act, says what we can do. What you can do is you can do this private settlement agreement, and it's a contract. It's the judge isn't going to sign off on it, but it's public. I have it right here, and you can put anything you want in it. And if they don't comply, you can either go to state court and file a breach of contract action, which I did once in Vigo County, or you can bring a new lawsuit, or you can restart the lawsuit. So we have this private settlement agreement, and what generally happens with private settlement agreements is that the defendants or the county view that as binding, as they should, and use that to keep the lid on while the new jail is being built. In only one of the counties that I ever sued did we have a private settlement agreement that did not result in a new jail. I think that was in Grant. All the other counties that I mentioned, there are others, resulted in new jails. If the private settlement agreement goes away, it goes away, and there's nothing left. What that means, of course, is at this point, I represent all the prisoners in the jail. They are not going to be able to file a new lawsuit because we have this private settlement agreement in place. If it goes away, nothing will stop another lawsuit from being filed for an injunction, an order to stop what's going on, an order as we have in Allen County, where we have a judge saying the conditions here are unconstitutional. It's a binding order, and you're gonna fix it. So that's the alternative. And the reason that private settlement agreements stay in place, as I said, is to sort of keep the lid on while you move to the next step. Now, the lid in Monroe County has been kept on for a long time. And that's a problem. I think people have become comfortable in the fact that you have this jail there, there's this case out there, doesn't seem to be harming anything. And you know, let's be realistic. Most people are not focused on the conditions in jails. But we should be, because you're dealing with a jail where experts have said, beginning with Ed Cohn in 2008, beginning with the people you hired, some of whom I know who were great, this report that was issued 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, saying, look, you have to fix this. That helped? Wasn't too boring.
Could you let us know if a new lawsuit happens? I guess what I'm asking is, what's the worst that can happen to us?
Well, the end of the world. I don't mean to make any threats. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst that can happen is, as in Allen County, you are found to have an unconstitutional jail. You end up owing attorney's fees, even though I work for free. The ACLU gets paid for my time. The attorney's fees are capped under the Prison Litigation Reform Act, so it's not as much as it could be, but you have to pay attorney's fees. But probably more importantly, and defendants don't seem to consider this, if a court finds that the conditions in the jail are unconstitutional and have been, every person who's been in that jail for the last 2 years, because that's the statute of limitations in Indiana, can sue you for damages for being confined in unconstitutional conditions. The advantage to the private settlement agreement, of course, is there's no admission or finding of unconstitutionality. But if a court makes that finding, then that hurdle in a lawsuit having to prove unconstitutional conditions has been removed. And you know, and as I said, from a human condition, something bad is going to happen in that jail. Because number one, frequently something bad happens in the best of jails, and this is not the best of jails. And this has no reflection on the sheriff, who obviously is pedaling as hard as he can, and his staff. But if you're dealing with an antiquated facility that has bad sightlines with unhappy people, something bad can happen. And you don't want that to happen.
Mr. Falk, we've heard that some agency came in and told Vigo County what they had to build, how big they had to build it. Can you talk about that, clarify that, tell us how that came about?
I don't think that's true. What happened in Vigo County is they were working with an architectural firm. I want to say DLZ, but I'm not sure. And there was a lot of dispute back and forth as to how big to build the jail. And there was a study done, I believe, and they came up with a figure. There's been a study done in Allen County as well, sort of projecting for 20-year life of the jail, what given population trends, what size the jail should be. And I think there was an estimate in your study, but there was no one who came in to tell them what to build. And from my perspective, even though, as I gave the illustration of Vanderburg, which I thought was overcrowded on day one, I can't tell you what to build. One of the things the Prison Litigation Reform Act does is it imposes a much more hands-off approach on what either a court or a plaintiff can do. All we can do is have you do what is minimally necessary to satisfy the Constitution. So if you want to build a jail that is overcrowded in 2 weeks, you can do that because on the day it opens, it's not overcrowded, but then you're asking for trouble. So it makes sense to plan. But there was no agency that told them what to do. Now, I know the Sheriff's Association. I know Bill Wilson, who used to be the jail commander here, and I actually just saw Bill recently at a retirement event for a lawyer. They can provide help, but any architect that you hire, of the architects who do jail construction will be able to give a projection, or not if it's not an architect, a construction manager or a planner will be able to give you the projections you need to at least get you in the ballpark. And you can certainly take into account diversion programs that you set up. It's a big step. I know. I've never been in public office for some reason. Go figure. But once you make the commitment, it's not that hard. There are a lot of entities out there that do this for a living in terms of making sure you do it right, make sure you do it in a way that makes sense for you and your community. But it has to be done. And as I said, it's admirable that you want to be perfect. Most communities don't aspire to perfection, but sometimes perfect gets in the way of getting it done.
Councilor Iverson, you had a question? Thank you.
I do. Yes. Thank you. Ms. Falk, thank you for being here this evening, and thanks to your son for watching. I hope you get a good review. I'm on the county council, which is the fiscal body, and I wanted to ask a question just for clarification based on what you just said, is that I have people talking to me and saying, well, why don't you make a large enough investment to make the jail whole again? Why don't you make a large enough investment to revitalize the jail? And I heard you say that investment may not be a wise, or there may not be a large enough investment to make the jail whole again. Did I understand you correctly?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Now, again, I'm a lawyer. I'm not an architect or what have you, but in reading the report and in touring the jail, and I haven't been there for a couple of years, it's bad. It's not a sensible construction under the best of circumstances because of the way it's laid out and the limitations that having it on top of that building imposes. And not only does that not make sense from an architectural standpoint to me, given the reality of how it's degraded over time, it really is throwing money away. You obviously have to maintain it. I mean, you have to keep it going for however long you have to keep it going for. But the idea of saying this is the permanent place for the rest of time of the Monroe County Jail makes very little sense, especially if you want treatment components. There's a way of doing that. There's a way of having a campus and having services on the campus. You can't do it in this structure. Again, that's me, Ken Falk, lawyer. But I did, I would also defer to, the people to Dr. Ray and Dr. Beck and the others who wrote this report that make it pretty clear.
Thank you.
And at some point, you're throwing good money after bad. I mean, how many times are you going to fix the roof? You know, how many times are you going to deal with toilets? I know, and maybe the sheriff has this experience. I know from dealing with older jails in Allen County, they don't make the parts anymore. In the toilets, they leak all over the place and they can't get the parts because they're so old.
Judge Corson?
I was just going to say, when I read the report, it said that the jail currently doesn't maintain constitutional standards. And I think that the lawsuit, if I understand it right, is mostly about overcrowding. So it's not really dealing with the physical conditions so much of the jail.
The lawsuit focused on crowding because it was so overcrowded, but the report that Ed Cohn did and a component of housing someone constitutionally are the conditions in the jail. Things get infinitely worse when you cram too many people in that type of space, but the space is still bad.
And just from a lawyer perspective, if you have a report or you have noticed that the roof is failing or something and it collapses and injures people, that's obviously a liability problem that we're all on notice.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, I understand not wanting to throw a ton of money into a structure we might not keep, but do you agree that there has to be some basic repairs that keep the employees safe, keep the inmates safe?
Yeah, unless you're willing to close the jail today and just let, which you're not. Of course. I mean, and that's money that has to be spent for basic maintenance to keep things at least on an even keel. But the idea of spending a large sum of money akin to a capital expenditure to try and rescue that building strikes me. And again, I'm a lawyer, not an architect, not a jail planner, but it strikes me as a foolish use of money.
And when you say that, I'm assuming you mean like rebuilding it as a new jail. That wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of saying, well, we'll go in and we'll rip out the cells and reorganize the cells and do this and that and put in new plumbing and do that just doesn't make any sense to me.
But you make repairs so that if the water hits the electrical box, and the building catches on fire, those are things that need to be repaired.
We don't want that. Actually, while I was in the middle of the case in Vanderbilt County, their jail did have a fire. Someone and luckily no one was hurt, but they ended up, because again, that jail was sort of adjacent to the city county building. They ended up sort of walking people through the courthouse in being guarded because they couldn't stay in the jail. So yeah, you don't want that. Yeah, I am not advocating not spending money on the existing jail. I didn't want the sheriff to arrest me before I left the jurisdiction. No, you have to do that. And the problems that he showed you guys on the slideshow that I watched in the tape are real problems that have to be addressed. But there's a whole nother level up there of capital work, and that should be done in a new facility, in my opinion. And in the opinion of everyone else who's offered an opinion, people much more knowledgeable about it than me.
And just for the public's sake, the roof is to be repaired this spring. We're waiting for the weather to make that possible, and are also trying to ensure that we're diverting the water away that is leaking from that electrical box.
I did have a question since you're talking about that. You said you fixed the shower stalls.
It was the bottom part was peeling away, and so water was going down in between the molding and the wall and leaking. And so they figured out a way to sort of epoxy some of that back into place. And I think are going to have a contract, maybe even with an outside group to make sure that
has that been done though?
At least part of it has been. Yeah.
When was that done?
I don't have a date. I can ask Richard.
Okay. I was just wondering because I had my second flood in my office last week. So
well,
that was a specific issue.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about some of that later too. But yeah, that was something that was caused by an inmate, not by the shower stall, is my understanding.
And that's another thing, by the way. Toilets and stuff are so much better now in terms of preventing the ability of prisoners to clog and flood and what have you. And the lines are much clearer so that if there's a problem, many of the jails I go to, if there's a problem with one toilet, the other toilet starts erupting like Old Faithful. Yeah, it's a nice image, isn't it? So again, That's just what you get with the new jail.
I have a question while transitioning there. And I recognize you're not the architect, site planner, designer, and all of that. But you've seen a lot more of this than I have. And I'm curious about the variety of sizes of properties that I recognize that we're not building up. We want to build flat. And the one place I've seen most recently was Hamilton County. I believe there's 2 stories there, but it's open in the pods. So there is that clear line of sight, but that seems like probably as much as you really want. And what do you see in terms of acreage?
I don't, my father, who was a patent attorney and an engineer, used to cry to himself because he never explained to me what acres were. I just don't understand the concept of area. So I went into it. I thought I would have to do any math in my career. Yeah, I don't know what sort of acreage. Yeah, I could send you what I'm sure I have somewhere what Vigo County is, because that's what I've been dealt with most recently. I know Allen County is that's not a comparable because it's much larger. But I can find that out, but I just don't know.
And typically you're seeing a campus-like approach as opposed to a singular building?
Well, that was the approach that Marion took. Other places did not. Vigo is a self-contained building, although they have a large medical ward, and I'm sure they have, I toured it before it opened, so I'm sure there's a separate wards where they can deal with prisoners with issues. But the Marion County approach is different because they did have a whole criminal justice campus. And of course they moved the courts as well. So it really is a campus, but the idea of separating out into a separate building, somewhere where you can take someone who may be having an episode, maybe having just too much to drink or drugs, need to wear stuff off, makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense not to process them immediately in the same way. Most jails won't process someone whose blood alcohol content is above a certain amount or is on drugs. And it just makes sense to do things that way.
Thank you.
I wanted to clarify reference the actual leakage into your office. There was 2. The first one was, and this is not pointing the finger, it is just a fact. It was a worker from ASI caused a flood. And then the second one is true, the inmate did actually cause the second one. But what we did was on the second one, the jail commander brought in a lot of the staff, correctional officers, they were already off, and brought them in to clean that stuff up because it was happening so fast, you couldn't wait for ASI. So we took care of it on our own. And I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't go worse, because we had the staff that came in right away on a day off to actually clean that up to a degree.
I appreciate that.
I think too, in some of the newer buildings that we've seen, the ceilings are so high that it's very, very difficult for some of these damages to occur, which protects the jail even further from things. And I know in what we saw in Vigo County and maybe a couple of other places with these steel cells, they've got shutoffs at the back of the cell so that they can quickly take care of, address some of these issues as well. And so when you talk about, it's not just the building, it's all the other pieces that go into it. It can make a real difference and make it easier, require less staffing and less maintenance.
Well, and one of the points that the sheriff made in his presentation that in late January was that when you put a prisoner in a cell that is so problematic, that affects his or her behavior. Contrary wise, if you put someone in Vigo County, those cells are really nice, and that has an immediate effect on the behavior of the prisoners. Great. Most prisoners. I mean, there's
great.
So I want to go back to what Commissioner Gittens was saying earlier in terms of like, if we get to the point where the expiration date comes and goes and we still haven't done what we need to do. I guess I've repeated this because this is what I've heard, and shame on me if that is what has happened, because I've been told by other higher ups as well, in terms of this is what will happen if we don't do this. So just to make sure that I hear you correctly, if we get to this point where this expiration date comes and goes and we still haven't done what needs to happen, we have been told multiple times, at least to me, by multiple people, that if we do not do what we need to do, we will, in addition to being sued and whatnot, we will have the federal government come in here and just do whatever it is that they want to do. And that is the fear mongering thing that we have had in terms of telling folks, this is why if we don't move quickly, we're going to come in here and at taxpayers' expense in dollars, they're going to build this high-rise jail at your expense. So you better get on board with it. I just want to make sure I hear that correctly. I want to make sure the public hears it correctly, and anybody else, so that we can put to bed this and move forward with the correct information.
Well, I could just leave now and leave that hovering, because I have to tell you that if the settlement agreement, private settlement agreement, or when it expires next January, at that point, if we decide not to continue it, I or other people are free to bring a lawsuit against the jail, claiming, and the county, excuse me, claiming that the conditions are unconstitutional. The federal government, theoretically, I assume the federal government can move in anytime they want if they think there are ongoing constitutional violations. I've never had that happen in any of my jail cases. I would like to keep that as a menacing presence, but I don't know how realistic that is. I think the more telling point is that this county has recognized for 15 years, at least, that you need a new jail. There's nothing to stop the county from being sued today by prisoners for damages. My lawsuit doesn't concern damages. You could be sued right away. I think it's fine to do things out of fear, but I think it's better to do stuff because it's the right thing to do. And you guys know what the right thing to do is.
I think some of the things that Councilwoman Crossley referred to came from certain legal advice. And so I appreciate you raising that tonight. I think it's important for us to hear it, but I think it's even more telling that we are open to lawsuits from this. And
oh, you are. You certainly are.
That could be a huge thing. Yeah. Are there other questions from my colleagues here?
I wonder if we have time to open it up to the public for questions. I wonder if we have time to open it up to the public for any other questions for Mr. Falk while he's here, as our public comment period was cut relatively short earlier.
I just have to go home and write a brief, so this is better than that. So.
I do want to thank Mr. Falk for being here. I know it's not easy or fun, but I do appreciate you providing really salient and important information for us.
Thank you.
And your presence is greatly appreciated, your knowledge and experience as well. Thank you.
And I really appreciate all the efforts you've made. I mean, it's extraordinary, the report and the people you've had trying to work to solve this problem, but I think you've reached the point where you need to.
I think we do have a question. Let me turn that mic on.
No, that's a...
How are you folks doing? I'm Don Griffin, former deputy mayor. I just want to, this is a clarifying question. You're not saying we shouldn't invest for the short term in the jail. We definitely need to bring it up to code and make sure that it's maintained properly until until it's time to move into a new structure, correct?
Precisely. You don't get any sort of dispensation for not protecting people's constitutional rights today because you're planning to build a new jail tomorrow. You have to protect them today as well.
And let me ask you another question. So do you think that also includes wraparound services for mental health? And should we try to also address those concerns right now and immediately?
I think anything that can be done to minimize the number of people in that facility protects those people from being in that facility and protects from further stress on that facility.
Okay.
Having robust diversion now can easily be transferred to a new facility. There's no reason to wait on that.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good one.
I actually see that Ms. Itlow is here and she has a question, so I will move.
I would like to introduce our matriarch, Charlotte Zitlow. That's the person whom the Justice Center is named after.
We are of long acquaintance.
Okay, we gotta go. Thank you very much for the opportunity to say something. I would like to say, first of all, I'm responsible for all this and I'm sorry. On the other hand, I probably got the best history of anybody in the room of why we're here now. And one of the things I didn't bring along today was my padlock. I have about a 4-pound padlock that came from the previous jail. and there were what, 40 cells that were locked each individually by padlocks with keys. And that whole cell block was locked with a key, with a padlock and a key, right by the kitchen where there were a lot of grease fires. So when we had to do lots of things at that time, obviously, but Judge Dixon said, I don't care what you do with the courthouse, just get the prisoners out of that jail before they all burn up. So we were under serious stress.
Sure.
And people were escaping too, I noticed that. But it was a terrible, terrible situation. So we understood the urgency of it and the dangers, not only to the town, but to the people in there. It was total, this is even more humane than now because you couldn't even find the toilets and so forth. Anyway, so we ended up in 1986, dedicating the new jail. And we scrambled to do it. And we hired consultants, and we traveled around the country and looked at things. And it was clear to me and to all of us that the ideal thing would be to have pods, that would be the thing to do, and that it would save on staffing and just visibility. So I fully think that that's a good idea. I'm not apologizing for what we got, although I think it was absolutely not perfect, and we knew that at the time. But we had but we also thought it was not a bad idea to have the jail above the courts so that prisoners could be moved to the courts as they were, or prisoners is the wrong word, I think, detainees. It could be moved up and down to the courts. And we saved a lot of staff time. We had just a very minimal staffing number in the sheriff's department who had to both maintain the road and that sort of thing, and be the keeper of the jails and the bailiffs and watch so it was a compromise. There's no question. And so my message to you is, I think you have to understand, just doing something may not be all it sounds like. You've got to do something the best you can and hope that lasts more than 30 years. I think that's the main thing. It has to be sensible. You have to be able to deal humanely with people, but don't think that you're going to build a perfect jail. I'm afraid that doesn't happen.
Yeah, thank you.
So I also, you know, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do at this moment as much as we can to make decent humane conditions in the jail, which I appreciate the sheriff have bringing to our attention generally. And I appreciate all of you being welcoming the criticism and understanding that it's got to be done, and it cannot be done well unless everybody works together. That's terribly important. And we have to all be willing to take criticism. And Lordy knows I hold that padlock. I think this is my, you know, it reminds me of everything. Criticism is inevitable. Failure is not impossible, but not failing. Victory is difficult. Perfection is difficult. So that's what I have to say. Everything has to be thought through, and you know, the location was very important. I do want to put in a statement about that. But location was something we thought a great deal about, and that was, we started by thinking about a juvenile facility, because I don't know if it's still true, but juveniles, as they're dealt with in this system, inevitably have to go to Indianapolis, because we don't have anything to really accommodate that kind of detainment here well in this county. And Steve Galvin, who's just retired, and I and a bunch of other people traveled all over the state to look at juvenile facility, and realized that the best thing would be to have, you know, out in the field someplace where they can build gardens and run around and play baseball or something. That would be healthy. But that did not work. We couldn't even get anywhere with that idea. And it certainly didn't. But what we did know is that by the juvenile facility being in Indianapolis, parents didn't get to see their children. The children didn't get to see their family. And it was additional strain on the society. And so location, and that's true in the city too. I go to Monroe Hospital frequently, unfortunately. And that's just across, it's what, 15-minute ride, but still it's something I have a car to get in there, to get there with. We have no public transportation there. So we have to be cognizant of the difficulty that it poses for people to get back and forth to the jail, and having it at a distance made no sense. And the community at that point was resolute on that issue. It should be downtown near the records keeping and the courts. Yeah. So that's enough addition to think. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and so glad that I can.
What a charlatanism.
And Commissioner Giffens, maybe this would be a good time to bring up my agenda items.
Yes.
Thank you. So I do have at least 2 proposed agenda items for meetings moving forward. One, I would ask that we put on the agenda a reentry support.
A what?
Reentry support, specifically focusing on the first 72 hours in which someone is released from the jail. And I understand that that's probably not something we can solve within a meeting, but what I'd like to do is propose, say on that March 20th date, is if we meet as a committee and we start working collaboratively to map that issue. I think that's a place we could hear from the sheriff to how the current release process works, and understand from the sheriff maybe what those needs are, so we can hear what the sheriff needs to make sure we're supportive of that. Also, I think we could have the Board of Judges, either through them presenting a representative, but hear about pretrial release and probation. I just think if we could start mapping what services we currently provide and understand which services we don't, where those gaps are, we can start working now to address some of the issues that currently exist while we're waiting for that facility. I just think that'd be a great place to start. And I would suggest the March 20th date to give both the sheriff and the judges an opportunity to start gathering that information. And I think this would be a great place for County Councilor Iverson to lead that conversation, considering he went to the Mental Health Court Summit and specifically took the section on mapping that we learned about. So I thought that'd be a way for all of us to start collaboratively working towards current problems. In addition to reentry support, I would ask at our next meeting, we talk about land size. I think that question has come up repeatedly. I know it's come up today about whether or not it's a campus or whether or not it's a single entity. So I would ask at the next meeting, after the commissioners have shared their discussion on their vision, that we then have a conversation about what facilities or buildings would or should be co-located, which would help us get a better sense of how much land is actually needed as we move forward. Because I saw in the February 8th work session that Mr. Cockrell asked for permission to reach out to the city. And I just want to make sure those conversations are as productive as possible, because if they're having these conversations for larger amounts of land than we need, we may be foreclosing options that are available and that have increased access to some of the most vulnerable members of our community. So I was wondering if we could put that on our next meeting's agenda.
I will work with Councilmember Iverson. We've been developing the agendas together. I don't know exactly the timing. And I have something else also that I want to say that I think addresses a little bit of what you just raised. So, yeah.
I'm happy to hear it. Which part?
About land size. Yeah. Judge Stafford.
You're welcome to go ahead and respond to her if you wish before I talk.
No, go ahead and tell us what else you wanted on an agenda item.
Well, it's not so much an agenda item as old business. I had asked last meeting if we could get square foot numbers for all of the different offices concerned, and I wondered if we had those.
When I guess I didn't understand the question last time for all the different offices concerned, I didn't understand.
I wanted to know the square footage of the current justice building, the square footage of the current probation offices, the square footage of all of the different offices that we're talking about putting together, so that we can independently do some work on investigating land size options. I would add to that request that I understand from a different conversation that we had that the responses to the request for proposals, in other words, the proposals may not be able to be public, but I would certainly hope that the requests that were put out, I would assume those are public if they went out to different contractors, but I haven't seen them. I don't know, has anyone else on the committee seen them? I think that would be very helpful for us all to see those and for the public to see them.
You're talking about the RFQ?
I don't even know what it's called because I haven't seen it.
I will ask legal what if that's possible and see what we can do. I do have something else prepared because I do want to respond to the many things that we've been hearing from people.
So do we have the square footages?
I don't, because I misunderstood part of what your question was last time, and I apologize. That was totally on me. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that also. I apologize for reading. I'm not a natural public speaker. And so, but I do try to prepare, and I hope you realize that. Last week on WFHB, Sheriff Marte and Councilmember Crosley indicated that the commissioners are moving too fast. At least that's what I thought they were indicating. If not, again, I apologize, but moving too fast in an effort to build a new jail. As Councilor Crosley stated last week, the county has been under a settlement order since 2009 to provide a more humane facility. The consultants we hired told us in 2021 that current jail needs to be replaced, not renovated or expanded, but replaced. And Mr. Falk, who's here this evening, has said the same thing. Different members, as you know, different members of county government had visited 3 other jails in Indiana, a new jail in Columbus, Ohio, the jail in Clanton County, Kentucky, and 2 jails, one of them not yet in commission, in Arizona. The commissioners have been criticized for going to Arizona, where we also looked at a release center, which addresses some of the reentry kinds of questions that you're raising, Attorney Wilson, and a crisis diversion center. These are different approaches to both decreasing incarceration and reducing recidivism. I think those are goals of all of us around the table. We've been asked to find out how much floor space, and this is where my misunderstanding came in, is in the current jail as a way to help people understand why we need more acreage than what our current jail occupies. Personally, I want something with a much larger footprint, something with much more programming space. I want to see a single-story jail that provides natural light. I want to see more recreation space and larger day rooms. I want to see more medical space and a larger intake area. I want to see something that uses less staff and is less stressful for our jail staff to work in. Building a multi-story jail will just lead to a repeat of some of the problems we already experienced, and that is part of the reason newer jails are single story. Two of the companies who responded to our request for qualifications, companies with many years of experience building jails, have recommended the 25 acres that we've been talking about for this purpose. There have been multiple questions and multiple requests to build the jail within Bloomington city limits. With that 25 acre number as kind of our guide, we have been looking for land within the city. Last December, the city council denied the necessary rezone for land we wanted to buy on Fullerton Pike. We're all aware of that. We have asked the city of Bloomington about the possibility of using the Hopewell area, which is 24 acres, for a jail, and we were told no. I've asked the mayor if the city would upgrade Adams Street to provide better access to county property near Catalent, and he said no again. We have asked the city to help us identify land within the city. And if we hear of such possibilities, we will explore them. But we cannot wait indefinitely for that to happen. I think all of us agree on that as well. And with Sheriff Marte's presentation 4 weeks ago, I think that pushed us even harder to get this to move us forward. We all know it has to happen. Another issue that's been raised has been the renovation of our current jail or even adding an extra floor. If we were to consider that, which goes against what the consultants and Mr. Falk have recommended and what Sheriff Marte has indicated needs to be done, we would first need to hire a structural engineer and an architect and wait months before getting their report. And what happens if they tell us that the current jail cannot be renovated? We will have lost valuable time while the current jail continues to deteriorate. Adding another floor does not increase the recreation area, does not increase natural lighting, and does not prevent problems which impact the courts below them. Renovating the current jail or adding an extra floor probably will not reduce the number of people needed to staff the jail also. I don't know if this is correct, but I was told that an inmate broke off a sprinkler head in the jail, causing water to leak into two of the judge's offices. As we have also heard, inmates have stopped up toilets and sinks, causing problems in the offices and courts below. If we were to renovate, we would need to pay to have the inmates housed at another jail and pay for them to be transported back and forth between an out-of-county facility and our courts. At the same time, we would have to lay off jail staff, including the person who oversees the kitchen. During renovations, where would our court offices and our courtrooms be located? We've heard a lot about transportation, including transportation for an inmate when he or she is released from jail. What type of transportation issues will local inmates face if they are released late in the day in Johnson County or Vigo County or Clay County or Greene County? What type of transportation issues will our public defenders and private attorneys face as they travel to meet with their clients in other counties? What transportation issues will arise if an inmate needs to be rushed to the hospital? What happens with transportation if we need to place inmates in jails in more than one county and then need to acquire an additional van for transporting them? Renovation and/or expansion of the current facility is not, in my opinion, the solution. But to quell your fears, I want you to know that I, at least, and I believe my fellow commissioners, are not looking to build a jail with hundreds of additional beds. We want a jail that is more humane and can, if the need arises, be expanded, as has been done in other areas. We look forward to sharing more of our vision at an upcoming meeting. As has been discussed tonight, I became a county commissioner almost 4 years ago, and the jail was an issue long before I was sworn in. I do not believe we are speeding through anything, given how long this has been a concern in our community. And in my opinion, it's incumbent upon us to decide what we want and to move forward. So I thank you all for your time.
I would briefly respond that I am very concerned about a 25-acre estimate that we have not been able to see or review. Mm-hmm. As a frustrated architect myself, although I am primarily a lawyer, I don't understand why we'd need 25 acres.
Can I ask another, when you're done?
It just does not compute. If we think about a building for perhaps probation, public defenders and prosecutors, if we think about a building for clerk and courts, and if we think about a building for sheriff's office and jail, that could be done in 3 or 4 blocks, which is hardly 25 acres. If there are other buildings that we're talking about, they haven't been mentioned at these meetings and I don't know what they are, and I would love to know what they are. But I feel a little bit like there's a secret plan to end the war in Vietnam and I don't know what it is. And I would like to know what it is.
I just wanted to add, in previous meetings, I said that I would like everything we do to be evidence-based. So is there evidence that we need 25 acres? Or is that the person who is building the jail? I'm assuming they would like to build a bit bigger jail because they get paid more to build a bigger jail. I don't know, acreage wise. So that's what I'd like to know. And also not as speaking as someone who's on the board of judges, but I work in that building and I'm seriously concerned that there's 2 floors of steel above me in a crumbling building.
Yes.
And so if we have to move people out of the building because it's not safe and pay for transportation, that's what we should do.
And I appreciate that. I actually join my colleagues on this committee. I appreciate that we're starting to have the conversation. It would be helpful if we continue this conversation at the next committee, because currently on the agenda, it's you're going to share your vision, which I think will be helpful because we'll understand where that starting place is. But it's also about dividing us into subcommittees. And what I'd like to do is to roll up our sleeves and start to get to work. And I think to do that, we need to stay as a group and to share information openly, which is transparently, and we need to work collaboratively. So I'm hoping at our next meeting, instead of dividing us, we explore this a little more. And when you say 25 acres, what does that 25 acres include for you? Does that mean a jail and a court, a justice building? Does that mean the public defender's office and the prosecutor's office? Can you help us understand where that 25 acres is coming from? Because it seems to be on reports that we can't look at and we haven't even seen the requests. So maybe we'd understand it better if we had information as a group. So could we do that next meeting and further this conversation to try to move forward?
I think Sheriff Marte had it, and then
I do want you to move fast. One example would be when it rained really hard and the roof was leaking, water got into the dryer. Think about that, electrical dryer. So I do want you to move fast. So I don't know who said that I made a statement that I don't want you to move fast. I'm the person that from day one said, let's move fast. And I got accused of moving too fast. So I'll say it again. I want you, please move fast. I do.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I just have one quick question. Since I know it is 6:08 and in previous meetings, it was said 6 o'clock, we're supposed to be done and out. Is there a way that, I know we had a couple of people, because your statements were not on the agenda and that ate away from a few people that had public comment that I saw online, and maybe a few people here in person. Can we just take a few minutes, since we've gone back and forth and taken the public's time, just to hear what the public has to say? Is that permissible among this Community Justice Response Committee? Can we please do that?
I'm sorry, I have to be somewhere at 6:30.
Yeah, several of us have other obligations, and it's not that. Yes.
Okay. I just, because it said on the agenda 4:40 to 5 o'clock. But again, since I really feel like this is bigger than any of us here. And if we're trying to move forward in a more transparent way, can we just listen to the public, please?
I'm happy to stay.
I can stay too. I have a teenager that's on her way up here. But as a woman of many hats, I will, as an elected, I took on this position, and I would hope others at this table took on that position to listen to the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just stay and just listen. That's all I'm simply asking, especially if we're past the point of 6 o'clock.
I'm willing to stay as well.
I can totally stay.
I can stay. Yeah. Mr. Falk, we're not insisting that you stay here. No, thank you. I think it's, yes.
Okay, so I guess first person, is that right?
We have a seat here.
While we're waiting for people to come up, I did want to just say one thing about the statement that you made, Penny. I didn't hear exactly the same answer in our conversation about Adams Street, I think, as you did. I did hear that the city probably wouldn't want to jump in and pay for all of the infrastructure required with a new jail, but I didn't hear the door closed on that conversation. And I think it's worth continuing conversations with our city colleagues on that idea, as well as any others that they might have, in the interest of finding a location that could work, that's closer in.
Well, what I heard the mayor say is that we would have to pay for all upgrades, which to me means the city will not pay for it.
Well, I mean, and it's fair for us to pay for upgrades within the property, or, you know, from the current node of development on into the property that we're considering. You know, I think he deferred us to the planning and the transportation folks at the city, which I think we should, you know, pursue a conversation with at some point. I don't want to close those doors until we've really had those conversations with everybody who's got the ability to make things happen.
Thank you.
So just because I know we want to hear public comment, could I renew my request then that we continue this conversation at the next meeting? Because it sounds like a lot of us have some issues we want to talk about collaboratively.
Well, in part, I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about was what that means to be breaking into the subcommittees. And breaking into the subcommittees for me does not mean that we wouldn't come back on a regular basis to talk about those things, to share what we're coming to. I have no intention of trying to shape what goes on in the judicial process. That's not my bailiwick at all. And I want to respect the people that do take care of that. And so part of it is that discussion. So we will try to see how we can work that into things.
Okay, because I think the question of whether or not we're having subcommittees, my understanding is still an issue on the table. So I look forward to talking about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have two more names on my list here. Next up would be Sydney Foreman, if Sydney is still present. Is there anyone else on Zoom? Okay, I'll have you read it in.
Sounds good. Okay. Hello, my name is Sydney Foreman, a member of Care Not Cages. And I just wanted to let you all know, we've been distributing a petition around, which now has just under 70 signatures and counting, which asks the committee and the county officials and the city officials to take all the available steps to decrease the existing jail population, as so to relieve the pressures on the current jail, and to further call upon the county to produce a full study of the cost of renovating the existing jail before proceeding with any new land purchase and construction plans. And I would just like to echo the importance that whatever you do, I think you all know where I stand about the ideas of a new jail. But whatever is built, whatever is done, I think the location is severely important, and it has to be located downtown. Building a giant facility, 25 acres, large, way out in the out in the county, is just a horrible idea. And if you could like put yourself in those shoes and imagine what that would be like, to have to, like, the shame of getting in a car and driving out to a campus where if you get on a public transportation and that's the stop that you pull, everybody knows why you're going there. Everybody knows that you're in trouble. Everybody knows that there's this stigma around it. But if you're taking the bus just to downtown, you can get off at any stop and find your way to wherever you need to go. And just remembering that everybody that goes there is a human, whether it's their job or because they have to go show up for an appointment or whatever it is. Just remembering that any one of us could end up there. And what would one of these places, but where would you want to go? Where would you want it to be? Yeah. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Kaiser Goodman.
Yeah, good evening and thank you for your time today. Kaisa Goodman, Public Engagement Director for the City of Bloomington and a member of Monroe County as a resident. As I've stated before, the city administration believes strongly that any new jail and particularly the corresponding wraparound services be located close to downtown Bloomington for a variety of reasons, including access to services, transportation, economic impact, and simply the need to not hide away the jail or the people who are incarcerated in it. It is our sincere hope that we do not isolate a jail in a secluded or rural part of the community. These are our current and our future neighbors, and it's important to determine how large of a space is needed for the new capacities and services we ought to invest in. At a recent meeting of this committee, I believe 2 weeks ago, a member asked if the Hopewell site was an option for the jail, and County Attorney Jeff Cockrell followed up by email with the mayor's office. I'll read into record part of Mr. Cockrell's exchange with the mayor just so we're all on the same page. Mr. Cockrell, the county commissioners wish to reach out to see if the city would be willing to explore the use of the former Bloomington Hospital campus, that's what we call the Hopewell site, as a potential landing spot for this use. If that is not available, the commissioners are interested in knowing if the city had any other land it deems appropriate for this use that the city is willing to discuss. And a selection from the mayor's response. The short answer is I'd be happy to sit down at any time to discuss the jail project in all its facets, including potential sites. The Hopewell site itself is not a good option. The 24 acres have been the subject of extensive community planning over the past several years, including a detailed master plan completed in 2021, with a major focus on hundreds of units of housing. That said, we'd be happy to discuss all ideas we might bring to the table at an appropriate setting, end quote. I also want to address a mischaracterization of a conversation that included the mayor, some council members, and Commissioner Githens about the land near Catalent. The mayor did not say that the city would not.
You were not present for that.
May I finish my comment?
Yes, but you were not present. How can you quote something?
The mayor did not state that there was not an opportunity for a road there or say no. He said that they were willing to work together, like Ms. Wilt said, to address any issues, including infrastructure needed. And I want to conclude just by saying that rather than a transactional exchange about the location of a new jail, I encourage us to focus on public health and desperately needed services and make strides on that immediately. Funds are available and immediately needed for preventative measures, quality of life for people incarcerated, and services for people reintegrating into our community. And as part of that conversation, we welcome a discussion of the goals and the priorities related to parcel size, location, and amenities needed at a potential new facility, including how to problem solve together. This is more than a land transaction. This is a question of community values and how to realize them. Thank you.
Thank you. As we conclude tonight, there is one other thing I would like to share with people, members of the community. There is JDI grant funds available for families who want to participate in a virtual trust-based relational intervention workshop. This is for parents and caregivers, and this is to help prevent entry into the justice system. I think this is a very worthwhile thing. If people are interested, they should contact Christine McAfee at cmcafe@co.monroe.in.us. This is a free program that's available to up to 5 families, and Christine can give more information on that to anyone who's interested.
There's actually a hand on Zoom raised, and she's had her hand up for a while. I just want to make sure we're respectful of their time.
Thank you. I don't know who it is.
It's Renee Miller.
Renee Miller, resident of Monroe County. The carceral system does harm. Find better ways now. Start the conversation. It's overdue. I want to commend the judges in this meeting, as well as councilpersons Crossley and Wiltz, who want evidence-based ideas, not from horrible campus ideas. This is a disjointed comment, by the way. I wasn't thinking I was going to get to speak. We also haven't heard how we need to listen to the inmates. For years, they have not been believed. If we had listened to inmates, we probably wouldn't be in the position we're in now. It's obvious that there's been lots and lots of inmates trying to tell people that it's been inhumane, and nobody listened, nobody cared, and they were left sitting, sleeping in that environment, and it's unconscionable. Thank you. Listen to the inmates.
Thank you. And I believe there was someone who left a comment in chat. That was the same person? Okay, thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks on March the 6th at 4:30. Thank you.